This guy is Tuma, he is being chased by thugs. Just now, when Tuma entered the restaurant to celebrate his summer vacation, he saw a girl being teased by thugs. Tuma approached to help her who expected this guy to have accomplices with him. Tuma crawled to his feet and ran, and when he reached the bridge, he didn't see anyone chasing him. Tuma stopped. Suddenly the other girl approached, not to thank them, but to ask why Tuma saved those guys. Yes, Tuma just now was not saving her, but helping the other guys get rid of this tiger. He advised her to give up the habit of casually hitting people. The angry girl unleashed a bolt of lightning straight at Tuma. But he didn't evade, but instead negated the entire attack. She was shocked that she didn't know who he was. They fought one match. Thanks to that girl's lightning, the whole Tuma house lost power. The food in the cupboard was also spoiled, bad luck kept coming to him. Tuma still encouraged himself to go out and dry the mattress in this beautiful weather. Suddenly seeing a girl lying on the balcony, she kept crying out of hunger. So Tuma gave her the bread he had just stepped on. She happily took his hand. Tuma treated her to some spoiled food in the cupboard, but she ate it so well which made Tuma very guilty. She just introduced herself as Index. She is the archivist of grimoires and is being hunted by the Magic Guild. Tuma didn't believe it, he only believed it if Index tried it for him. But Index without magic couldn't do it. Tuma boasted of this arm of his, just touching any kind of power would neutralize it. Index laughed, he had to prove it to her. Index pointed at her clothes, which were covered with magic power to protect her. If what Tuma said is true, then try dissolving it. Tuma ran straight in and touched his shoulder, his clothes all showing. Index screamed loudly biting Tuma, until she finished fixing her clothes. It's about time Tuma goes to re-education, he will leave the key to her. But Index refused, she would explode if she stayed in Tuma's room. Before leaving she reminded him that Tuma's arm had already sucked all his luck so he could only live with bad luck. Going to Tuma's supplementary class due to the lowest score, after school, he had to play games with the teacher to never win before he could return. On the way back, the Thunder Girl from yesterday continued to quarrel with Tuma. Tuma didn't care, being despised by Tuma. Masaka angrily stomped his feet to generate electricity. Due to using illegal powers, the robot guards chased them away. Arriving at Tuma's house, he saw many cleaning robots in front of his door, so Index was here. Tuma approached to call her into the house. He was shocked when the girl was covered in blood. Suddenly a red-haired guy appeared behind him, he admitted it was him. Episode 2. Index's return to this place may be due to forgetting things. Tuma immediately remembered the shawl that Index had left behind. She certainly didn't want him to get involved and come back. That guy chased Tuma away. He regained his magic book magic power. Tuma couldn't understand why Index would bring any books with her. With her intelligence than someone who only needed to read it once, Index could remember everything. She had read and stored a lot of grimoire contents in her mind. He told Tuma to back off. Tuma didn't listen and rushed to punch the villain. This guy slightly dodged his name to one side. Usually he doesn't do that, but once he does, it is to kill the opponent. He summoned a flame that startled Tuma. He threw fire at Tuma and turned away coolly. Tuma's voice startled him. Throwing it again, Tuma was able to solve it. He used his strongest move against Tuma. A terrible demon was summoned by him, it rushed to attack Tuma. He stopped with his hand, but this time it didn't disappear, confusing Tuma. He looked at its body, the monster's body regenerated continuously. At this point, Index suddenly spoke up, she didn't even realize it, but her mouth automatically went to the chapter of the grimoire telling Tuma how to defeat the monster. Tuma needs to destroy all the runes that the guy has built in this building. The redhead stopped Index from speaking, then attacked Tuma. Tuma jumped downstairs, he saw pieces of paper. This is the rune that Index was talking about. The monster chased, Tuma fell upside down to the floor below. It didn't chase after him. Tuna now understood that it only works in areas where runes are pasted. The redhead was about to harm Index when Tuma turned around. He had turned on the fire protection system in the whole area. The monster was nowhere to be seen. This guy couldn't believe it, so Tuma was aiming for the runes. He summoned it back to attack Tuma, this time completely dissipating. Tuma didn't want to go to hell with Index, nor did she want her to go there. So Tuma will pull her back. The fire brigade came to the rescue, and Masaka also came to watch. Tuma took Index to the park to rest. You can't let her go to the hospital, the others will find out her information. Tuma hurriedly asked her about healing magic. She knew but she didn't have magic power so she couldn't use it. Magic was created to help people without talent who possessed superpowers that would never be used. Tuma realized, if that's the case, just give Index to someone who doesn't have superpowers. He carried Index to the teacher's house. Index changed to grimoire mode. Within 15 minutes she would die. Tuma needs to leave this place immediately. If he stays here, that right arm will destroy all magic power. Tuma ran far away. Some girl was watching him. Episode 3. Before the treatment. Index wants to know the exact time it is now. Index got up and went to the table to draw her blood on it. The teacher advises Index to rest. The ambulance will be here. Index was stern that the ambulance couldn't cure her injuries. Index took some things and placed them on the table, which the teacher realized was a mock-up of her room. Before starting, Index reminded her to concentrate. If she failed, she would die. Then Index sang the teacher along with Index. The room shook violently. Index halted the first step of linking the room to the table that had succeeded. Next, the teacher needs to imagine a beautiful angel. Immediately the room became distorted, a sign of imminent failure. The teacher clasped her hands to imagine and succeeded, but due to distraction, she maintained the failed image. They did it together again, chanting magic. After a while, Index was cured. She returned to her normal state, now just resting. Index was happy that she didn't die or Tuma would blame himself. When Tuma returned the next morning, Index was wearing her teacher's cute bunny outfit. The teacher needed to report his situation to the city government, but before that she gave him time to think. The teacher turned her back to go to the market. She had told Tuma before that if she didn't ask anything when she returned, he didn't have to declare it himself. Wait for the teacher to leave. Then Index tells Tuma something about magic. This thing is very dangerous for the people in the city. Magic is different from superpower. It is much more diverse from the attacks to their usage. However, just understanding its principle would be undone, so the grimoire was born. Tuma wondered why he didn't destroy them. Index found him so shallow. Like urban legends, once true, it will be passed on forever. That's why Index had the job of sealing them inside her head. Index was curious as to why Tuma would trust someone she hadn't known for a long time. Simply because the first time you heard her story, no one would believe it. Until you see it, it will be different. With this hand, Tuma will protect her. The red-haired guy and a girl named Kanzaki watched them from afar. Kanzaki investigated Tuma's information. His arm was not of any kind of magic or superpower. After that, the teacher returned without asking anything, cooked food for them to eat, and let them stay at home. That night Tuma took Index to the public bath, and on the way Index told Tuma something about herself. A year ago, at that time, she lost her memory, and her mind was filled with only grimoires. Tuma got bitten by Index and ran off somewhere. He had to go look for it. Suddenly all the cars and people passing by disappeared. Kanzaki walked towards her uncle. She used runes to eliminate those who stood in their way. Episode 4. She wants to know where Index is now. Tuma didn't care, so she pulled out her sword and slashed at him. The shock wave shot out scared Tuma. Tuma tried to stay calm. Even with this arm, he was still able to protect himself. Kanzaki had heard the red-haired guy talk about the arm. It could nullify magic. If that's the case, just don't let it touch you. Tuma rushed at her and was pushed away. He didn't give up trying to touch her. Tuma discovered that there were countless strings around her. That sword-drawing game was only for color. Kazaki defeated Tuma. Tuma, why should he protect an outsider like that? Tuma angrily chases after him. He might be the weak one who couldn't protect her, but with Kanzaki's strength it was possible. Why did she do this? Kanzaki stepped back. She didn't want to be like this, Kanzaki told Tuma. She and Index were from the same church. The reason Index was hunted down was her perfect memory ability. Tuma had a hard time understanding how such a perfect memory could lose his memory. Kanzaki corrects Index's memory as being erased by them, not suddenly disappearing. They did it to protect Index. 85% of her brain was used to store grimoires. The remaining 15% was used to store everyday events. Once a year they had to erase these memories, or else Index's brain wouldn't be able to hold the information and she would die. Tuma didn't listen. There had to be a way to help Index remember what she'd been through. He had already decided to protect her. Kanzaki angrily jumped at Tuma. Every year they create good memories and then have to delete them. Like the red-haired guy who clearly cared about Index and had to pretend to be the enemy. They had to do that so that the forces wouldn't target Index. Tuma dismissed all her theories. Kanzaki has power, yet Kanzaki hasn't done this, she doesn't deserve it. Tuma fainted. Only then did the redhead come out. Done. Kanzaki got everything working again. Suddenly something big fell on the street and they didn't know who did it. Masaka's sister must have been an esper. Tuma woke up dreamily. Index was already by his side. Tuma was unconscious for 3 days. Tuma suddenly remembered what Kanzaki had said. This was the last day Index had to erase her memories if she wanted to live. But it seems Index shows no sign of it. Index felt guilty. It was the teacher who discovered Tuma and brought him here. It was only because of her that Tuma went to fight the magicians. Tuma encouraged her, so Index got up and went to cook. Tuma paled when she saw the way Index held her chopsticks. She definitely doesn't know how to cook. At this time, the doorbell rang, and Kanzaki and the red-haired guy came over to take Index away. Index promised to come along as long as they didn't harm Tuma. Episode 5. Kanzaki called to inform him that at 12 o'clock tonight they would perform a ritual to save Index. They will arrive before 12 o'clock at night. Sadly, Tuma really has no way to save Index. Kanzaki insists they have to if they want to save the little girl. Tuma mentioned science. Kanzaki denied she didn't want to bet with Index's life. At least until now, their way had saved her many times. Tuma didn't care, he would save Index no matter what. Tuma read books about human memory. He asked his teacher to introduce some people to know about the human brain, but she didn't answer the phone. Tuma called the research labs, still no one, until someone answered. But when they heard him talk about magic, they thought he was crazy. The clock was right at 12 o'clock, the sound of footsteps sounded. Kazaki had arrived. Tuma couldn't stop them anymore. They will perform the memory erasure ritual right here. Tuma tried to get them to send experts to his brain to save Index. The red-haired man angrily pushed his head close to the girl. She was already dying and there was no time to test it. He took out a crucifix, which was the most important thing to perform the ritual. If Tuma interfered with just grabbing here, then Index would die. Tuma is out of the way. The red-haired man started drawing charms. Before starting the ritual, the red-haired man chased Tuma away. If he was here, the nullifying power might even interrupt the ritual. Tuma burst into tears. He wasn't even strong enough to save a little girl. Index doesn't deserve these misfortunes. Kazaki felt sorry and asked the redhead to come out with him. There was still time before the ceremony began, for Tuma to speak out all the words in his heart. Now that Index woke up, Tuma promised Index that he would get stronger and that the next time he saw her, no matter what the situation was, he would protect her. Index happily nodded and fainted again. Tuma burst into tears. He suddenly remembered something. How exactly did Kanzaki know Index's condition? You need to confirm this. Tuma called the teacher to ask. It is true that there is a disease of perfect memory. But the human brain that remembers a lot never has a brain explosion because of too much memory. Now Tuma understood the problem. Kazaki was tricked by the other churches, but why was Index so painful? In order to preserve Index's memory, he decided to take a risk to save her. Taking off his armband, Tuma touched his face to his forehead, and saw no reaction. He thought it was right to touch another place, and Tuma suddenly noticed something in Index's mouth. Tuma slid his finger in and immediately touched a number line. Index's whole body was shocked. Tuma shot away. Index unleashes her power to blow everything up. Hearing the sound, the red-haired man and Kazaki quickly ran up to check. Index was in a state of protecting the grimoires. She deployed magic to prepare to destroy the people in the forbidden area. Episode 6. Index now doesn't recognize anyone. She unleashes a powerful attack towards Tuma. He reached out his hand to help. Both Style and Kazaki were surprised that Index could use magic. Tuma was so angry that they still didn't realize it. Index could definitely use magic, but that church tricked them into sealing all of her abilities. All want to turn her into a mobile archive. Tuma's ability to erase magic is starting to weaken. Index's attack was too strong, he couldn't completely cancel it. Style couldn't bear to watch Tuma trying alone. He scattered runes to help Tuma. He had promised long ago that as long as he could save Index, he would do anything, even if he had to confront the church. The two of them working together still couldn't block this attack. Kazaki also rushed to lend a hand. Index shot straight into the sky but continued to attack. Style summoned the Shikigami to protect Tuma so that he lunged at Index. Tuma touched her head. Index fainted back to normal. As for Tuma, the feathers created by Index's attack fell on his head, and he collapsed shortly after. The next morning Index was in the hospital. She tore up the letter that Style had left for Tuma. The church asked him to bring Index back, but Style knew the church had deceived them all this time. He left Index in Tuma's care and left the city. And when the time was right, he would return to take Index away. After reading the letter that exploded, Index hurriedly asked Tuma's situation. The doctor reminded Index to prepare mentally first. Index entered Tuma's room. He was lying on the hospital bed, but Tuma didn't recognize her. The doctor said that all of Tuma's memories were destroyed. Currently Tuma is like an infant with no memories or memories. Index tried to recall some memories with Tuma, but even where he was he couldn't remember. Index had tears in her eyes. Suddenly Tuma burst out laughing. This injury was caused by the magic fired by Index, so it was enough to just raise his right hand to his head. Index got angry, she bit Tuma and left. At this time the doctor entered the room. He thought it was okay because it was true that Tuma had lost all his memories. What Tuma had just said to Index was just an instruction left by the other two. Tuma felt extremely fine again. Although he lost his memory, he didn't know who the girl was, but his instinct told him he didn't want her to cry. 2 weeks after the event, Mr. Stiel went to see the chairman of the Science City Council. Here he negotiated a secret mission. That thing called blood has already appeared. It is a proof of the existence of vampires. He wanted him to cooperate with the person who possessed the ability to ascend to the enemy of the Dharma, which was Tuma. Mr. Stiel will come back to find Tuma.